I thought I knew what betrayal felt like until I opened that bathroom door and saw them together, changing everything I believed about love, trust, and friendship. The morning of our engagement party started like any fairy tale. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, sunlight streaming through the lace curtains my mom had hung 20 years ago. The dress I'd picked out 3 months earlier hung on my closet door, a flowing emerald green number that made my eyes pop and hugged my curves in all the right places. I remember running my fingers over the silk fabric, imagining how proud I'd feel walking into that backyard garden party with my ring catching the afternoon light. My stomach was doing those nervous butterfly flips, but the good kind. The kind that happens when you're about to celebrate the biggest milestone of your life with everyone you love. I'd spent weeks planning every detail, from the string lights we'd hung between the oak trees to the playlist I'd carefully curated with songs that meant something to our relationship. Even the weather was cooperating, with clear skies and that perfect late spring temperature that makes you want to spend all day outside. I'd been with him for 4 years, living together for 2. We'd weathered the usual relationship storms: his mother's initial disapproval, my quarter-life crisis when I changed career paths, the stress of moving cross-country when he got that promotion. But we'd come through stronger each time, more committed to building a life together. When he proposed 3 months ago on the beach where we'd had our first real conversation, I felt like everything was finally falling into place. My best friend had been my rock through all of it. We'd known each other since college, survived terrible roommates, heartbreaks, family drama, and career changes together. She was the one who helped me pick out the engagement dress, who stayed up late with me addressing invitations, who assured me that my pre-party jitters were totally normal. She'd even taken the week off work to help with last-minute preparations, sleeping on my couch and turning my kitchen into party planning headquarters. The party was supposed to start at 3, but people began arriving early, eager to celebrate. My backyard transformed into something magical, fairy lights twinkling overhead, mason jars filled with wildflowers on every table, the scent of barbecue mixing with the honeysuckle growing along the fence. My parents were beaming, playing perfect hosts and telling embarrassing stories about my childhood to anyone who'd listen. His family had driven in from 2 states away, and seeing our 2 families mingling and laughing together felt like a preview of the wedding to come. For the first hour, everything was perfect. I floated between groups of friends and family, accepting congratulations and showing off my ring for the 100th time. The photographer I'd hired was capturing candid moments, and I kept catching glimpses of her snapping pictures of me laughing with my college sorority sisters or hugging my grandmother. I felt radiant, loved, supported by this incredible community of people who'd shaped my life. But then I started noticing little things. He seemed distracted, checking his phone more than usual and giving short answers when people asked about our wedding plans. When I tried to pull him aside for some couple photos, he said he needed to make a quick business call first. My best friend seemed on edge too, declining the champagne she'd been looking forward to and making excuses when people tried to pull her into group conversations. I brushed off my concerns, telling myself that big parties made some people anxious. Maybe he was overwhelmed by all the attention or stressed about the speech he planned to give later. Maybe she was worried about her own relationship drama. She'd been having issues with her long-distance boyfriend and had been unusually quiet about it lately. The party was in full swing when I realized I hadn't seen either of them for about 20 minutes. I'd been caught up talking to my aunt about wedding venues, but when I looked around the yard, they were both missing from the crowd. I figured they might be inside helping my mom with something. Or maybe he'd finally cornered her for advice about his speech. She was always good with words and had helped him with work presentations before. I headed toward the house, weaving through clusters of guests and accepting more hugs and congratulations along the way. The sliding door to the kitchen was open, and I could hear my mom laughing with some of her book club friends who'd come to support me. But the house felt quieter than the buzzing energy outside, and I found myself walking through the rooms almost aimlessly, looking for familiar faces. That's when I heard voices coming from the hallway near the bathroom, low, urgent whispers that made me pause. I couldn't make out words, but something in the tone made my chest tighten with an emotion I couldn't name yet. I walked closer, my heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor, following the sound. The bathroom door was slightly ajar, just enough that I could see movement inside. Without really thinking about it, I pushed it open wider, expecting to find someone who needed help or was looking for something. Instead, I saw them. My fiancé and my best friend pressed against the bathroom counter, his hands tangled in her hair, her arms wrapped around his neck. They were kissing with an intensity and familiarity that told me this wasn't their first time. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake made in champagne-fueled celebration. This was something that had been happening, something they'd been hiding, something that made a mockery of everything I thought I knew about the two most important people in my life. The world tilted sideways. I felt like I was watching a movie of someone else's life, like this couldn't possibly be happening to me on this day, in this house full of people celebrating our love. The sound that came out of my throat was somewhere between a gasp and a sob, loud enough that they sprang apart, their faces flushing with guilt and panic. The next few seconds stretched like hours. We all just stared at each other, the weight of what I'd witnessed hanging in the air like a toxic cloud. My best friend's lipstick was smudged, her hair messed up in a way that would have been obvious to anyone who looked closely. His shirt was wrinkled, his face pale except for two bright red spots on his cheeks. I wanted to scream, to demand explanations, to slap them both and storm out dramatically. Instead, I felt myself go completely numb, like my body was protecting me from the full impact of what I was seeing. I heard myself say something like, "I need some air," in a voice that sounded foreign to my own ears, and then I was walking away, past the sounds of laughter and celebration, toward the front of the house where my car was parked. I sat in my driver's seat for I don't know how long, staring at my engagement ring and trying to process what had just happened. The party continued without me. I could hear the music and voices carrying from the backyard, oblivious to the fact that the guest of honor was having a complete breakdown 50 feet away. Part of me wanted to march back there and announce to everyone what I'd seen, to let them deal with the aftermath and explanations. But a bigger part of me felt too shattered to face all those expectant faces, all those people who'd come to celebrate something that had apparently been built on lies. My phone started buzzing with messages. First from him, then from her, then from my mom asking where I'd gone. I turned it off and drove to the only place I could think of, my older sister's apartment across town. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without asking questions, settling me on her couch with a box of tissues while I told her everything in broken, rambling sentences. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the engagement party, and I'm writing this from my sister's spare room because I still can't face going back to the apartment I shared with him. The aftermath has been messier and more complicated than I ever could have imagined. The first few days were a blur of difficult conversations and painful revelations. He showed up at my sister's apartment the morning after the party, looking like he hadn't slept and armed with explanations that somehow made everything worse. According to him, it had been going on for 3 months, starting right around the time he proposed to me. He claimed it began as emotional support during a rough patch in her long-distance relationship, then evolved into something physical that they both knew was wrong but couldn't stop. The part that really twisted the knife was finding out that my best friend had been the one pushing him to propose to me. Apparently, she thought that if he committed to our relationship officially, it would force them both to end their affair and go back to normal. She'd even helped him pick out the ring, knowing the whole time that she was sleeping with him behind my back. The beach proposal I thought was so romantic and spontaneous had been carefully orchestrated by the two people who were betraying me. I kept asking him why propose if he was having feelings for someone else? Why plan a future with me while actively sabotaging it? Why let me plan our engagement party and invite everyone we knew to celebrate something he wasn't even sure he wanted? His answers were frustrating and circular. He loved me but was confused. He thought the proposal would clarify his feelings. He never meant for it to go so far. He was planning to end things with her after the party. My best friend's explanations were even more painful to hear. She called me crying every day for a week, leaving voicemails that ranged from desperate apologies to attempts at justification. She claimed she tried to stay away from him multiple times but kept getting pulled back in. She said she'd been planning to confess everything to me after the engagement party, that seeing how happy I was had made her realize how terrible she'd been. She insisted that she loved me like a sister and never wanted to hurt me, which might have been the most insulting part of all. The practical aspects of untangling our lives have been exhausting. We'd been living together for 2 years, splitting bills and building a shared life that now needed to be completely dismantled. I had to figure out how to break our lease, divide our furniture and belongings, separate our finances, and return wedding gifts that had already started arriving. Every mundane task felt like another layer of loss, packing up books we'd bought together, deciding who got the coffee maker we'd registered for, canceling the venue deposit we'd put down just weeks earlier. My family has been incredible through all of this, but I can see the strain it's putting on everyone. My parents spent so much money on the engagement party, and now they're dealing with awkward questions from relatives and family friends who don't understand why the wedding's been called off. My mom keeps oscillating between wanting to comfort me and wanting to march over to his workplace and give him a piece of her mind. My dad, who's never been great with emotional stuff, has been unusually quiet and keeps offering to help me move or fix things around my sister's apartment. The worst part might be losing my entire social circle along with my relationship and best friendship. We'd been together for 4 years, which meant most of our friends were couple friends who now have to choose sides or navigate the awkwardness of maintaining relationships with both of us. Some people have been amazing. My college roommate drove 6 hours to spend a weekend with me, and my work friends have been taking me out and checking on me constantly. But others have been weird about it, either avoiding the topic entirely or asking invasive questions about what really happened. I've been staying busy with work and trying to figure out what my life looks like now. I'm 28 years old and feel like I'm starting over from scratch in ways I never expected. I'd been so focused on building a future with him that I'd let some of my own friendships and interests slide. Now I'm trying to remember who I was before our relationship consumed so much of my identity. The hardest moments come at weird times, when I see a movie trailer for something we'd planned to see together, when I hear a song that was on our engagement party playlist, when I instinctively reach for my phone to text my best friend about something funny that happened. Grief is such a strange process when the person you're mourning is still alive and sending you messages you're not ready to read yet. I've been thinking a lot about signs I might have missed, moments that should have tipped me off to what was happening. Were there secret glances I didn't catch? Inside jokes that weren't really jokes? Times when they seemed more interested in each other's opinions than mine? Part of me wants to analyze every interaction from the past 3 months, but I know that way lies madness. Sometimes betrayal happens not because the signs were there and you missed them, but because people you trust are actively working to hide their deception. Update 2. It's been 6 weeks now, and I'm writing this update because something completely unexpected happened that's changed my entire perspective on this situation. I never could have predicted this twist, and honestly, I'm still processing what it means for my future. Last week, I finally felt ready to start going through some of the stuff I'd left at our apartment. He'd been respectful about giving me space, only contacting me through my sister to arrange times when I could come by while he wasn't there. I'd been putting it off because the thought of being in that space, surrounded by reminders of our life together, felt overwhelming. But I needed my winter clothes and some books, and my sister offered to come with me for moral support. Walking into that apartment felt surreal. Everything looked exactly the same, but it felt like I was visiting a museum of my former life. The couch where we'd watched countless movies, the kitchen table where we'd eaten breakfast together every morning, the bedroom where we talked about our future kids and retirement plans, it all felt foreign and loaded with painful memories. I was in the bedroom, packing a box of my things, when I found something that stopped me cold. Tucked inside one of his dresser drawers, underneath some old college t-shirts, was a small stack of letters. The handwriting on the envelopes wasn't my best friend's, it was someone else's entirely. Someone whose name I recognized but had never thought much about. The letters were from his coworker, someone I'd met at office parties and company picnics over the years. They were dated going back almost 2 years, long before his affair with my best friend had started. As I read through them, a completely different picture of our relationship began to emerge. This wasn't just about him being conflicted or confused about his feelings. This was about someone who had been living a double life for most of our relationship, juggling multiple affairs while planning a future with me. The letters revealed an emotional and physical relationship that had been going on since shortly after he got promoted and started working more closely with her. They talked about weekend trips they'd taken together when he'd told me he was at work conferences. They referenced hotels and restaurants I recognized, places he'd later taken me, probably using the same romantic gestures he'd practiced with her. But the most devastating part was reading about their conversations about me. She knew all about our relationship, our plans to get married, even details about our sex life and my insecurities that he had no right to share. They'd apparently found it amusing that I was so trusting, so completely unaware of what was happening right under my nose. One letter mentioned how easy it was to maintain their relationship because I was so focused on planning our future that I never questioned his schedule or whereabouts. I sat on our bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of betrayals I hadn't even known about, feeling like the biggest fool in the world. The affair with my best friend wasn't some confused moment of weakness, it was just the latest in a pattern of cheating that had been going on for years. My best friend probably had no idea she was just one of multiple women he was seeing behind my back. The really twisted part was realizing that his coworker had been at our engagement party. I remembered her coming up to congratulate me, telling me how lucky I was and how happy we looked together. She'd been playing a role just like he had, just like my best friend had, without even knowing the full scope of the deception. I called my sister immediately and she came over to help me finish packing. We loaded everything into her car without saying much. I think we were both too stunned by the magnitude of what I'd discovered. I kept the letters, not because I wanted to torture myself by rereading them, but because they felt like evidence of something I needed to fully understand before I could move forward. That night, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called my former best friend and asked her to meet me for coffee. She was shocked to hear from me after weeks of silence and even more shocked when I told her what I'd found. Watching her face as I explained about the letters and the coworker was like watching someone's world crumble in real time. She genuinely believed that their affair was special, that they had some kind of deep connection that transcended his relationship with me. Finding out that she'd been just another side piece in his collection of secret relationships was devastating for her too. We ended up crying together in that coffee shop, two women who'd been manipulated and lied to by someone we both trusted completely. It was strange, bonding with her over our shared betrayal. We talked for hours about all the lies he'd told us both, the ways he'd manipulated our emotions and played us against each other without either of us realizing it. She told me about times when he'd seemed distant or distracted when they were together, moments that now made sense if he was juggling even more relationships than we'd known about. We're not best friends again. Too much has happened and too much trust has been broken for us to go back to where we were. But there's something healing about not being alone in this betrayal, about having someone who understands the specific kind of manipulation we both experienced. We've agreed to stay in touch as we both work through the aftermath of this situation. Update 3. 3 months have passed since I found those letters, and I'm writing what I hope will be my final update because my life has taken yet another completely unexpected turn. This one, thankfully, has been positive in ways I never could have imagined. After discovering the extent of his deception, I decided I needed to take control of my own narrative. I wasn't going to let his choices define my story or make me bitter about love and friendship. I started seeing a counselor, not because I thought therapy was the magic solution to everything, but because I needed help processing the complex emotions I was dealing with. The anger, betrayal, and self-doubt were overwhelming, and I needed professional guidance to work through them in a healthy way. But the real turning point came when I decided to do something I'd been putting off for years. I'd always wanted to take a pottery class. Something about working with clay and creating something beautiful with my hands appealed to me. My former life had been so focused on planning and organizing and building toward future goals that I'd forgotten about the simple pleasure of learning something new just for the joy of it. The pottery studio was in an old converted warehouse downtown, filled with natural light and the smell of earth and creativity. The instructor was this patient, encouraging woman who didn't ask personal questions but somehow made everyone feel welcome and capable. I was terrible at first. My bowls were lopsided, my vases collapsed, and I got clay under my fingernails that took days to scrub clean. But there was something meditative about the process, something healing about starting with shapeless clay and slowly coaxing it into something useful and beautiful. It was in that pottery class that I met someone who would change my perspective on everything. Not romantically, I wasn't ready for that and probably won't be for a while. But she became a friend in the truest sense, someone who saw me for who I was in that moment rather than who I'd been in my previous relationships. She was about 10 years older than me, recently divorced after a 20-year marriage and dealing with her own process of rediscovering herself. We started talking during one of our pottery sessions, bonding over our mutual inability to center clay on the wheel and our shared appreciation for bad reality TV. She had this way of talking about her divorce and rebuilding her life that was honest about the pain but also hopeful about the future. Through her, I met an entire community of people I never would have encountered in my old life. Artists, writers, small business owners, people who'd chosen unconventional paths or were navigating major life transitions. They welcomed me into their group without needing to know my whole story, accepting me as the person I was becoming rather than the person I'd been. One of the most unexpected developments has been reconnecting with parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. In my relationship, I'd become so focused on being the perfect partner that I'd lost touch with my own interests and opinions. I deferred to his preferences on everything from movies to vacation destinations to how we spend our weekends. Now, living on my own and making my own choices, I'm rediscovering things I love. I've started hiking again, something I used to do in college but gave up when he showed no interest in outdoor activities. There's something powerful about being alone in nature, challenging myself physically and mentally while surrounded by beauty that has nothing to do with human drama and complications. I've joined a hiking group that meets every weekend, and we've explored trails I never knew existed within driving distance of the city. I've also been volunteering at a local animal shelter, walking dogs and helping with adoption events. Being around animals that need love and care without any complicated emotional baggage has been therapeutic in ways I didn't expect. There's something pure about a dog's excitement when you show up with a leash or a cat's contentment when you spend time just sitting quietly beside their cage. My relationship with my family has deepened through this experience. My parents and sister have seen me at my lowest point and stuck by me without judgment. My dad, who I'd always thought of as emotionally distant, surprised me by showing up at my new apartment with a toolbox and spending an entire Saturday helping me hang pictures and fix a leaky faucet. My mom has been calling me more often, not to check on my recovery but just to share funny stories from her day or ask my opinion about something she's reading. I've been dating my independence, learning to enjoy my own company in ways I never had before. I go to movies alone, take myself out to dinner, travel to nearby cities for weekend adventures without needing anyone else's input or approval. At first, these solo activities felt lonely and strange, but now they feel empowering. I'm building a relationship with myself that's based on genuine self-knowledge rather than how I think others want me to be. My career has benefited from this newfound confidence too. I've been taking on projects I might have been too cautious to attempt before, speaking up in meetings and advocating for myself in ways that have gotten positive attention from my supervisors. Without the emotional energy drain of managing someone else's complicated feelings and secret behaviors, I have more mental space for professional growth and creativity. Final update. It's been almost a year since that devastating engagement party, and I'm writing this final update because I want to document how much my life has changed, not just the external circumstances, but who I've become as a person through this experience. I never got closure in the traditional sense. He and I never had some dramatic final confrontation where he took full responsibility and I got to express all my anger and hurt. My former best friend and I never had a tearful reconciliation where we forgave each other and rebuilt our friendship. The coworker, when I finally decided to contact her, simply confirmed what the letters had revealed and then asked me not to contact her again because it was too complicated for her current situation. Instead of closure, I found something better, a sense of peace that comes from accepting that some questions don't have satisfying answers, and some relationships end messily without neat resolutions. I learned that healing doesn't require the participation of the people who hurt you. You can forgive someone for your own well-being without needing them to earn that forgiveness or even be sorry for what they did. The pottery classes evolved into something I never expected. My instructor encouraged me to enter a piece in a local art fair, and to my amazement, it sold to a couple who said it would be perfect in their new home. That small success led to more ambitious projects, and I now have a small side business selling my ceramics at farmers markets and craft fairs. It's not going to replace my day job anytime soon, but there's something incredibly fulfilling about creating something beautiful with my hands and having people appreciate it enough to bring it into their homes. More importantly, pottery taught me patience in ways that extended far beyond the studio. Clay doesn't respond to force or hurry, it requires gentle, consistent pressure and the willingness to start over when something doesn't work out. Those lessons have influenced how I approach relationships, career challenges, and personal growth. I'm less likely to panic when things don't go according to plan, more willing to adapt and try different approaches. My social circle looks completely different now, filled with people I met through hiking, volunteering, pottery, and other activities I pursued for my own enjoyment rather than to complement someone else's interests. These friendships feel more authentic because they're based on who I actually am rather than who I thought I should be in a relationship. I'm more honest about my opinions, more willing to disagree respectfully, more comfortable taking up space in conversations and relationships. I moved into my own apartment 6 months ago, a bright, airy place with big windows and room for a small pottery wheel I bought myself as a celebration gift. It's the first space that's entirely mine, decorated according to my tastes without compromise or consultation. I painted the bedroom walls a bold teal color that makes me happy every morning when I wake up. I filled the living room with plants that I actually keep alive now that I'm not distracted by relationship drama. The kitchen is stocked with ingredients for meals I want to eat rather than what someone else prefers. Dating has been interesting to navigate. I've gone on a few dates over the past few months, nothing serious, just opportunities to practice being myself with new people and figuring out what I actually want in a partner now that I know myself better. I'm much more aware of red flags. Not just the obvious ones like secretiveness or inconsistency, but subtler signs of someone who might want to reshape me to fit their vision rather than appreciate who I am. The most surprising development has been my relationship with risk and uncertainty. The old me needed plans and guarantees, detailed timelines for every major life decision. The betrayal I experienced taught me that even the most carefully planned future can be destroyed by factors completely outside your control. Instead of making me more anxious, this realization has actually been liberating. I'm more willing to try new things, make spontaneous decisions, and trust that I'll be able to handle whatever comes my way. I think about my former fiancé sometimes, usually when I hear a song that was meaningful to us or pass a restaurant where we had memorable meals. But the anger and hurt have faded into something more like curiosity about who he really was underneath all the deception. I hope he's figured out what he actually wants from life and relationships, though I doubt I'll ever know for sure. I hope my former best friend has learned to trust her instincts about people and situations rather than getting swept up in dramatic narratives that weren't really about her. The experience taught me that betrayal, while devastating, doesn't have to define you or make you cynical about love and friendship. It can actually clarify what you value most and help you build stronger boundaries around those values. I'm more selective about who I let close to me now, but also more generous with casual friendships and community connections. I've learned the difference between healthy trust and naive blind faith. My family jokes that I'm a completely different person than I was a year ago, but I think I'm actually more myself than I've ever been. The person I was in that relationship was real, but she was also performing a version of herself that she thought would be most lovable and acceptable. The person I am now is more honest, more confident, more willing to be disliked for authentic reasons than loved for artificial ones. I still don't know what my future holds in terms of marriage and family. Questions that used to cause me panic now feel like interesting possibilities to explore when the time is right. I'm building a life that feels full and meaningful on its own terms, so any future partner will be adding to something complete rather than completing something that feels broken or insufficient. The engagement ring has been sitting in my jewelry box all this time, and last week I finally decided what to do with it. Instead of selling it or returning it to him, I'm having the stone reset into a pendant necklace, something that will remind me not of a failed relationship, but of my own resilience and capacity for transformation. The diamond will catch the light differently in its new setting, just like I see myself differently in my new life. This experience broke me open in ways that were excruciating at the time but ultimately necessary for becoming who I was meant to be. I wouldn't choose to go through it again, but I also wouldn't trade the person I've become for the security of my old life built on lies and compromises. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the doorway to the best version of yourself.